Hello, everybody, and happy Thursday. Yes, we're back. We've been away for a couple of weeks, a birthday, a demonstration and show that we had to attend to be commentators on, but Martin and I are back, and we'll bring Martin on in a second. So here we are today on Tech Talk Thursday. We have a very special guest with us that's joining us in a few moments. We've got Mitzi Wyman, who will be talking to us about her experiences using AI, LinkedIn, all kinds of wonderful stuff. But first of all, if I've got my setup right, let's bring on Mr. McKenna. Hello. How are you doing? Sunny Edinburgh? Is it warm? We always ask the question.
I'm doing well. Yeah, it has been a bit warm. In fact, a bit too warm. I was wandering around yesterday, and by the evening time, I felt like I'd got COVID or something, and then suddenly realised, it's tree pollens. I've been spending too much time in the garden, and
you got hay fever or something, or tree pollen? Oh no.
Yeah, it's one of those things that changes, I think, over time, and it never used to affect me, and now just certain tree pollens, really get to me badly. So yesterday was today I've just stayed inside.
Don't play. Well, I know you have a green thumb, and I know you like going outside, but if it's not the locust here, it's the ants that get me. So one of those things. Anyway, we have Val in the room. Val, thank you so much for joining us. I did actually forget to say that we're going live today after a couple of weeks off, because obviously we were working on Alex's show a couple of weeks ago, and that was my birthday last week. But anyway, thank you for being here and supporting us as usual. It's very nice to see you. So I'm just going to see if Mitzi is ready to join us. Give us a thumbs up, Mitzi, if you're ready. Thumbs up. Yep. It is. Right, let's bring Mitzi on and have a chat. How are you doing, Mitzi? Welcome to the show.
I'm very good. Thank you. Even though I've got a bit of an echo in my ear, but I'll just cope with that. I'm good. It's lovely and warm here. I'm in sunny Lincolnshire, and the sun is shining, and it's been gorgeous. And I was at the beach in Norfolk yesterday with the dogs, and that was rather lovely. So the weather has finally, turned for the better.
Well, you're beating us at the moment. Portugal's got another storm coming in. We've had 7 storms in as many weeks coming in from the Atlantic. Okay. So hopefully this is going to be the last one, because, they do say April is the season, they call it in Portugal, the season of 1 million raindrops. So I hope that's not going to be the case. We've had enough rain. We don't any more of that. And yes, we have been trying to...
That's much more poetic. Yeah. Much more poetic than April showers, isn't it?
It's the same thing, really, isn't it? We've been trying to sort out some of Mitzi's tech issues today. So Mitzi, unfortunately, is hearing herself a couple of times in the headphones. So hopefully it won't be too distracting. But for people who don't know who you are, Mitzi, maybe you'd like to just introduce yourself and tell the audience, what do you do?
Well, now there's a big question. I'm Mitzi. I'm based in Lincolnshire. And I do lots of different things, but how I know Neil is through video production and going live on using Ecamm and such like. But my main work is I do leadership development. So I work with all sorts of organisations, big ones like the National Health Service, the Cabinet Office, Judicial Office, there's big public sector entities, as well as corporates. And what I do is I help them think better. My focus is how do we create the conditions for people to think superbly well together, because very often they don't. We rush from one meeting to the next, people interrupting each other, and we barely have time to draw breath, let alone think about core and critical questions. And so that's the work that I do, helping them to explore that. But I found that doing these things online has worked surprisingly well. I think people are concerned that online meetings in particular can't be as effective as face-to-face ones, but I found using the technology has really been a game changer, and we can create the conditions for people to think as well online as we can when we're in the same room.
Definitely, and I'd actually had the pleasure of attending one of your workshops, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, where we were looking at giving people space and an opportunity to speak, especially when you're in a large room, whether virtual or physical, where people tend to interrupt and talk over each other. I'm guilty of that. Martin will say, you're always interrupting me, and I do that, and I do apologize. And I'm trying to get better. He's nodding. And one of the things that you did mention in that is a way of just adopting a different policy where people, when they are going round this virtual room or physical room, to give everybody a 2 minutes where nobody has the right to interrupt anybody, and no matter what topic it is, how difficult the subject matter might be, or explosive the comments might be, you're giving everybody an opportunity to actually speak. So could you tell us a little bit about how that works for you, maybe in the virtual world, where we're always on Zoom and it's maybe difficult to understand when there's a pause or whether there's a right for people to speak. But I really like the idea of allowing people to have that 2 minutes.
Yeah. And well, what we there are a number of things we do. I mean, if you're in a group online, then what I often do is I'll draw a virtual clock face. So I say to people, imagine you're around a clock, and I'll put people around that. So I'd say, Martin, you're at 12 o'clock, Neil, you're at 3 o'clock, I'm at 6 o'clock, and populate the clock, as it were. And then we always have a question, because questions are so important. And so there's a question, and then we invite a volunteer to answer the question. And everybody knows that nobody speaks twice until everyone's spoken once. And what that means is, at first it can be a bit frustrating, because some people are, the usual neurotypical extroverts, as we call them in the jargon these days, who are desperate to come in to speak. But this way, what happens is, knowing that you're going to get your turn and you're not going to be interrupted means you can start to think better. It can take a little bit of practice, but it's that thing about not just getting lucky, but knowing you won't be interrupted. Because online, very often, we're sitting there thinking, oh, should I come in? Should I come in? When's it my turn? Should I put my hand up? Should I do this? And all of that, of course, is taking bandwidth up in our brains. So we're not really able to think about the question. Whereas if we know that there's that, we're going to, as I say, get the attention, we're going to get our turn, then that means that we have good attention, we have equality, so everybody has a say, and that cultivates ease, which again enhances the thinking. And it's very important to say you can pass, so people don't feel obliged to speak, they don't feel the pressure of having to speak. So that's one way. But the other thing we do is we do thinking pairs. So we might put people into breakout rooms and they get to think about something for 2 or 3 minutes without interruption. And again, there you're able to go that much deeper in your thinking, with the quality of the person's attention, really listening to you, knowing you're not going to be interrupted, means that people typically get further in their thinking, because normally we're interrupted within 20 seconds of starting to speak. So this makes a huge difference to the quality of the thinking.
How do you run the online meetings like that then? Do you, to make it easier for people, so if they do feel compelled to speak and they're interrupting, would you go around and mute everybody and then only unmute the person that is designated to speak in that 2 minutes?
No, because, as I say, people know that they've effectively got a clock face. They all know where they sit in that. And so I just say, we're going to go round. And so, so it'll be Neil's turn. And when you'd finished, whoever's going around the circle. I don't worry about muting or unmuting. That's very rarely a problem. I usually prefer for people to not be muted, because occasionally, certainly in what you call open discussion, which is where anybody can speak in any particular order, but without interrupting, but where you have that regular sort of conversation, I think it feels more spontaneous. As I say, you're not wanting people to interrupt, but you sometimes want the oohs and the ahs or whatever, rather than something that sounds quite clinical. But I don't worry about muting, unmuting, because I trust people to know when it's their turn, if I've explained it properly.
I'll adopt that in our shows from now on, so Martin gets an opportunity to speak, so I'll be quiet and Martin can speak now.
No, it's funny because I think we do exactly the same now with our shows. Now we have the ability to move cameras about in real time by creating a little carousel where everybody is small, and then we'll roll to the top, and then when they finish their minutes or 2 minutes, they'll go back to the bottom, but everyone shoves across one and then rolls up, so you can see who's coming next on the carousel, and that seems to work very well. But it's exactly the same principle you've just described, I think.
And it's really interesting, though, isn't it? Because I get exactly where you're coming from there, and I can see the beauty of that, particularly depending on the sort of meeting it is. What I find, though, is that, and we've sort of had this conversation before, Martin, because I'm always amazed at the things you do. They look brilliant. And I think when you're doing your sales pitch and all those sorts of things, I suppose with my audience, what I try and do is keep things really simple. There's very little fancy stuff going on. I might have some text come up on screen. I might have a slide maybe, but so there's nothing that's going to interrupt their chain of thought. So, for example, it might be very easy to people think, "Oh gosh, I love the way he's doing that," and people are moving around, which takes them away from the question. But it's only because the sort of topics I might be just talking about would be like safeguarding children, or there's been a death in a hospital, or there's been a clinical issue. So it's slightly different. It's an environment where less is more. But I think really that's just showing the different ways in which we can use Ecamm and the different technology to suit the particular audience we have and what it is we're trying to demonstrate. But I even found when people use the chat, they say, "Oh, it's great, I can use the chat," which means I can say, I can capture things or send people messages. And I say, but for the person who's speaking, it's like an interruption suddenly come up and they've been distracted. And the whole purpose of this model, which I call the thinking environment, is to be free from interruption and to always be generating another wave of thinking in the mind of the thinker.
I think that's a very good point, because generally the audiences that I am talking to are either IT people or certainly, if they're not IT people, they're geeks anyway. Yeah. So what keeps their attention is looking at the screen to go, oh, who's coming up next? Who's coming? And they're intrigued by the technology behind it, and therefore they will keep watching. So it's a horses for courses situation there. And what you've described is, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want those distractions. We just want to concentrate on the content in hand. So, yeah, very different audiences and being addressed in a different manner.
Although it's interesting because with Ecamm, that's something as simple as being able to pull up a slide with some text on it. People like that because that it's supporting what it is I'm saying, but I'm not just having slides come up which can be a distraction. So there are small elements of Ecamm and being able to show some things which just emphasise certain points, and so. I say less is more, but in fact, of course, Ecamm is quite sophisticated, even being able to do that. So people do like it when we do use it, but it has to be really thought through.
I think there's a skill involved in knowing what to use when during a particular presentation. And I think to your point, if you're keeping it simple, then there are elements in any of the software Ecamm that we're talking about right now which can just reinforce a message just by bringing up maybe a quote, maybe bringing up a small, as you said, a graphic or something like that. Where on the other hand, if you're maybe in the gaming community where you want everything going on at once, bells and whistles, notifications, all kinds of things, then again, that's potential. And there's my watch telling me a notification right on cue. It all just sort of pops in, and again, people might just like that. But depending on the environment that you're trying to present, there are sort of rules and guidelines, and people should sort of think about what they're actually trying to convey without necessarily just throwing all the bells and whistles in there, because that's basically just distracting people, I think, from the actual message if it's just put there for the sake of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. We've got a couple of comments. So Valerie is speaking of comments, and this is a natural way to just break the flow of the conversation. She's just saying hello to you, Mitzi. And we've got Deborah who's joined us. Thank you, Deborah, all the way from sunny South Africa. I hope it's sunny where you are at the moment. But if it's not, go over to the UK, because apparently it is there. So I'd like to now ask you, Mitzi, about some of the things that you've been working on over the past few months. Now, you've totally embraced LinkedIn in terms of the platform for you, because obviously it's very suited with your customers. A lot of your customers are in the corporate world and the corporate environment. There's obviously a large contingent of NHS users and colleagues on LinkedIn, but you've started to use LinkedIn sort of in anger, for want of a better term, in terms of doing regular posting. And those posts have been a combination of both thoughtful and thought-provoking text-based posts, some controversial posts, some videos and things that you've been doing. So could you talk us a little bit about why, in your instance, you've chosen LinkedIn as your sort of main platform? I know you have a website and a YouTube channel as well, but I think right now you're focusing most of your sort of social platform is going to be LinkedIn, and that's where you're doing most of your work.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, as you said, it's that corporate world. I mean, a lot of my clients, I'd say 65, 70% are NHS, but I work with big corporates like Sony Pictures, Skanska, Arup, so really big organisations. And it's about growing a community. I think that's the thing I've really started to appreciate. I think people think it's about just posting regularly, which I do. I probably post too much simply because I just really enjoy doing it, and I should probably be running a TV show, as it were, like you're doing here of sorts. But I like posting things. Like I said, I've got strong opinions on lots of things. But I used to think, I've got to do lots of posts. But now I realise it's about the community. So as much as that, it's about commenting. It's about reaching out to people, and you can start to develop a community on LinkedIn in the way that you do any of the other sites. And I don't think people necessarily are aware of that. I think they think it's about, I've just got to keep posting and looking at how many likes. I think the other thing I've realised is it's not about getting thousands of likes if I should be so lucky. It's about who is my audience. And so it's providing I'm reaching the right people. So one of the things I use is Authored Up. And there are a number of tools, but I find Authored Up is good. It focuses just on LinkedIn. And what it is, it's software where I can draft my posts in there, which means that I have a few more options in terms of font and all that sort of thing. But I can see very clearly the analytics. And what's really important is I can see the level of engagement I'm getting for each of my posts. So, and it will tell you what is a good level of engagement, etc. And I'm typically getting anywhere between 2 and 5, 6% engagement. And anything over 2% is reckoned to be quite good. Now, that's not the case. I'm getting hundreds of thousands of people, but I'm getting the people that I want. So I can look to see who's engaging with me, who's been looking at my profile. And I can start to also see which posts are really attracting attention. Is it just one where it's a quote, just a few words? Is it the videos? Is it the vertical video? Is it the regular sort of video? All of that, and I can start to look at my engagement rates over time to see which things are most useful. But increasingly, what I'm starting to do is comment and think, who are the people I find interesting that I want to engage with? What are they doing that I can be commenting on? So over time, perhaps even starting to get a bit of a dialogue going. And of course, you can connect with people. So I'll have had people who will have been looking at my videos or anything I've posted, and I can write to them and say, I saw you were interested in that. And, occasionally, get a bit of a dialogue going.
That's really interesting. I think there's a rule now, or not a rule, but there's a movement going around, even on YouTube, that the number of subscribers isn't anywhere near as important as the people that are viewing and commenting on your material. Because you could have 100,000 subscribers, but only on average get 200, 300 views. So it's all about the ratio. If you've got a low subscriber count and very high and a relatively high view rate for the size of your channel, then that means that your content is resonating with people and people are looking at it. Now, obviously, there's other metrics to say, well, how long did they watch for? Was it 2 minutes, 5 seconds, things like that? But I think the tool that you mentioned is very interesting, because from what I do on LinkedIn and what Martin posts on LinkedIn, and Martin can talk to this in a second, it's difficult to understand, and we've spoke to John and a few other people who've had on the show before, what those metrics actually mean and how meaningful they are. Impressions versus views versus the engagement. What constitutes engagement? And I think if those people are actually commenting and interacting with you, that's the best form of engagement, because now you're resonating with somebody, you're engaging in conversation with them, and you're making connections. Because at the end of the day, you want to have something that you post, one that resonates with somebody, one that could maybe say, well, actually, maybe we can work together, maybe we can do something collaborative or something like that. I don't know, Martin, what you feel about things that you've posted and what you've seen in terms of engagement, but there's a fine line between impressions and actually engagement in terms of what people are actually looking at.
Yeah, so I think I'd almost split the engagement up a little bit as well. In that if they're commenting on something and it's I suppose, a useful comment or one that continues the discussion, then that's what you really want. So I could post, as I did the other day, a picture generated by AI, and it was just an amusing post of me as an action figure, and then I get a load of reactions to it. But those were just reactions to something daft that I'd posted. So the reactions don't really mean anything. But of course, associated with it, there wasn't any commentary that was taking the discussion to the next level at all. So that's definitely for me what it's all about. And I know, because I've had an online, or I had an events business, a face-to-face events business, and I built that up just using LinkedIn and no other marketing tools. So I spent a lot of time reaching out to loads and loads of different people and getting connected. So I've got 5,000 followers stroke connections on LinkedIn. The vast majority of those people are not interested at all in what I am doing these days with live streaming and associated training elements and all of those sort of things. So the people who are now commenting are a totally different subset, and they're all more recent connections of mine. But there's no real way of determining whether that was a recent connection or not without just going in and literally looking to see who's commenting. So it is a bit of a black art trying to analyse just how successful something actually is and which metrics to use. And I think John said things like, for instance, if people repost your content, that adds nothing in terms of the LinkedIn algorithm to keep it hanging around at all. And you'd have thought, oh, if 10 people repost my content, then surely it means it's interesting and therefore LinkedIn should keep it hanging around. But apparently, no, that's not how it works. So this is John, who's second, Esperian, who's a LinkedIn expert who's been on the show before. So that's, when we refer to that John, that is that John. There's a couple of Johns who've been on the show as well. So, but,
I
yeah.
found one of the things that's made the difference recently is, I have been posting quite consistently the last, say, 3 months or so, more so than I'd done previously. Doing a lot more videos and actually not worrying too much about, am I posting too much? If I enjoy doing it, there's an energy there. People look at it or they won't. But I think what's happening is people are just seeing me. I suppose people I know, the people I want to be in front of, I want to be in the forefront of their mind when they're thinking about the sort of work I do, or they're just more aware of me. And I think in a field that I'm in, which I suppose is relatively niche, that's important. And I think the fact that I use video makes a difference. And, I'm sure we're perhaps going to come on to this in terms of the use of video. Neil, I was in television, 30 years ago. It makes me feel so old. But in the 90s? I was working at an organisation called the Law Channel. And I used to make video-based programmes, mainly at Channel 4, but other on location as well. Well, I was interviewing lawyers, accountants, medics. I didn't actually do the interviewing, but I did all the scripting, and I'd be back in the control room, speaking to them through their earbuds, saying, ask the next question, move on to this, like they used to in the old days. And I loved it. It was probably the thing I loved more than anything I've ever done. And I've been a lawyer, I'm in business and various things. But and then, well, after, COVID came along and we all started working online, this was an opportunity to sort of resurrect all of that, except this time I could be, on the screen, as it were. But being in front of a camera never made me nervous. all of those sorts of skills that, reading a teleprompter, which I might do occasionally, knowing how, all the basics, I've been able to draw on those skills. None of that has ever been wasted. And so I find now what I'm starting to do is I'm trying to create more videos which are, I'm doing the vertical videos. So last week I saw a headline in the Health Service Journal that I think about £90 million had been spent on a piece of IT at what's called the CQC, the Care Quality Commission. And they said they only achieved 5% of the benefits that they were meant to have achieved from that software. So I got on straight away. I did maybe a 60-second video on that. I pulled up the headline and I talked, quite strongly about this is shocking. This shouldn't be happening. What's going on? One of the things that isn't happening is people aren't really listening to each other. They're not having the right conversations at the right time. Meetings aren't going to plan, and therefore we get situations like this. And so that was quite a short but really focused, hard-hitting video. I did another one when there was failing in an NHS trust, really serious situation, a litigation. And there I wrote a slightly longer form video. But what I'm trying to do is now talk with more authority and saying these are really important issues, and not just really engage with people in a discussion about things, but present myself in a certain way. And LinkedIn, using AI, using video, is one way that I can perhaps set myself apart, particularly from people of sort of my generation maybe, who may not be so familiar with live streaming and all of that. But so that's one way in which I'm using the tech.
Excellent. I was going to ask you a little bit, because you did mention it at the beginning of this section around Authored Up, which is a third-party tool that hooks into your LinkedIn profile and gives you one scheduling workflow where you can schedule all your posts up front and so on. But the interesting thing that you mentioned is about the analytics. So can you tell us a little bit about what that gives you above and beyond traditional LinkedIn metrics, and how is it, or how are you then driving what your content, how your content is successful? I guess, what is success to you with regards to the content that you're posting? Does it mean engagement? Does it mean clients? Does it mean referrals? Maybe you could just explain a little bit about Authored Up and what you use.
Authored Up does quite a lot of things. I haven't got it open here, so I don't know whether I can remember it all. But certainly it allows me to, see what I'm posting in terms of a grid, whether that's a calendar one or a listing. I can see, all the metrics in terms of viewings, impressions, how long people have looked at it for, engagement rates, all of that. I can click on any of those things and reuse them quite quickly, or I can open them up, I can edit them, etc. It'll also capture that over time, so I can look over, what's happening in terms of the number of followers I've got this week compared to last week or last month or last year. I can look to see whether there are any spikes over the last few weeks in terms of, I did a particular post on this day and I could see there was a spike. So obviously people really liked that. So it's quite a good way to see which of the ones are really, reaching the targets that I want, or reaching the numbers that I want. But I think what's interesting is for a while I was looking at that every day and I was checking it. These days I look at it occasionally. But what I realised is it's just being out there, just getting out there, just do it. And you can be constantly obsessing about the numbers and the impressions and all of that. But I know I do it because if I create a video from, because I'm using AI and various things, I can repurpose that content several times. And so therefore, I'm just doing it anyway. And I figure, if there's the energy there, then people will follow. But it's the fact that I can write to people and share with them a video, or send them to something on LinkedIn. So it's really just a way of pushing myself out there. I found that I can start to get a bit obsessed with the numbers, so I've started looking at them less, and instead focusing on, just outreach, really.
Yeah, I think the numbers are fine. To see how well you're doing, just in terms of, are these posts that I'm pushing out there resonating with people? And if they're not, then the metrics are going to tell you that. Just like the videos that we post on YouTube, if they don't get any views, then obviously there's something not right with that video, and we move on and do something else. And I think you can get too hung up on the metrics. I think what's the important piece is making sure that, one, the content is coming from you, you're enjoying posting it, and if there's people commenting on there, then that's going to lead, as we said, into those conversations, and maybe lead into then people wanting to work with you. I think, Martin, when you said you had your online events business, and if you don't mind me asking, was there a lot of business generated via LinkedIn, or was it more word of mouth? Was it more the in-person events at the time? Did LinkedIn work for you in terms of a platform that you could have lead generation derived from?
Yes, it did. But there was a lot of hard work involved behind the scenes. So I got into Sales Navigator, and then I got into another external tool called LinkedIn or something like that. It wasn't called LinkedIn because that would have been jumping on sort of the wrong, on top of the wrong people at the time. So it's intentionally called something not quite the same, and that allowed you to automate connection requests and build workflows up for those connection requests, so that there would be a set piece of time between the connection requests, and then dependent on whether there was any response, it could send out a second request or a follow-up email, or go and like one of their comments, and it would automate everything for you. And there was a big workflow engine behind it, and it worked very well. And I think eventually what happened was that LinkedIn decided they were going to ban that, but it was too late. I'd already used it, so I'd already got all of my connections. And because in particular I was operating events within Scotland, I knew exactly where my audience were by location. So I knew by location. It was a very narrow niche within IT, so I knew that they would have certain qualifications against their name as well if they were going to be of interest for me. So something called ITIL would feature in nearly all of their profiles, or ITSM, IT Service Management. So I was able to use search terms that I knew would bring up the appropriate people, and then just reach out to them. And because there weren't any other events of that nature going on in Scotland, it snowballed fairly quickly. So once I was able to put out a post, right, our next event is coming up, then a couple of days later it would be sold out for delegates, because the delegates were getting in for free anyway. So then it would be a question of taking the delegate list and then marketing that to other people I'd found on LinkedIn. But by that point they were generally looking for me, because they wanted to be vendors at the event, because that just meant they could typically send people up from London for a day and then meet loads of people and then go home, rather than have people flying up every week to meet one person at a time. So for a vendor, it made perfect sense to appear once and spend a fairly limited amount of money. And for me, I never really made any money from the conference as such. It more or less broke even. The revenue for me came from me going to the conference, talking to people at the conference, and then because I was neutral, they would tell me, oh, we're looking for XYZ. And then I'd say, oh, you need to go speak to John Brown over there, because I knew the market very well. And I would then get a commission for referring the client to John Brown. So the money actually came from commissions and referrals, and me continuing to engage with people on LinkedIn, because they would come to me and say, listen, we're looking for a new service desk manager. Do you know anybody? And of course I did, because I'm already connected to all the service desk managers in Scotland. So for me, it was a facilitation role. I sat in the middle of the web, but you had to know your topic very, very well. And eventually I got bored of it. It was kind of, because COVID came along and destroyed it all anyway. And then it became, do I really want to go back through all of this again? So I decided that I actually didn't want to do that again. So, but LinkedIn has worked very well for me in the past, providing you offer information that people want to hear rather than doing a sales pitch to them. Because the first thing they do is, if you say connect to them and then you try and sell them something, you're out the door straight away. That's not what it's about. You need to provide value, and that can be, in your case, videos, information, and comments, and standing up perhaps for their opinions when they might not be able to get onto video and do it, or not have the time to do it. I'm sure that you find yourself almost as a spokesperson for some of these people who are only on. You tend to think because LinkedIn is switched on all the time on all of our machines, I'm sure, that it is on everyone else's machine, and it isn't. They're on there once a month or once every few months, or at best every couple of days. It's not on all the time, and therefore, it can get a bit lonely on LinkedIn because you think, oh, nobody's watching, and then suddenly you find out that, oh, right, it's just because they've got other jobs to do.
Yeah.
That said, I've started, I run a what I call an NHS success webinar, maybe every 6 weeks, 2 months. And that has all been marketed on LinkedIn. I mean, I don't get a lot of people turn up, but I get really good people turn up. They're usually executives, some chief execs. So I get, senior people who've got something interesting to say and have influence. And so they turn up, and I'm finding increasingly people are saying, oh, when's the next one? And I'll share the link with other people. And so again, it's trying to create a community. And I set it up so it runs at a lunchtime, so people, even if they're working, can perhaps join it. And it's very much a space apart from the urgency and rush of the everyday, where you can come together and connect. But it's marketed on LinkedIn. And the other thing, what I'm going to do this time, and I'm hoping I'm going to get this right, is the next one's going to be a LinkedIn Live, which I haven't done before. And I think I thought YouTube looks quite straightforward, but LinkedIn Live seemed a little bit more complicated. But I know you've taken me through that, Neil, and I might have a quick check with you before I actually do it. But I find that those have worked really well. And I think that's the other thing about the audience, and being able to use LinkedIn to find out who are these people that are following me, and are they at the level which I want? Am I reaching the right people? And again, if I can say to people that my audience are typically C-suite people, then that's another reason they might want to engage with me. So I can see who am I talking to, who's attracted to what I'm doing, and all of that. And so in that way, it is really helpful, really useful.
Very good. Yeah, we've got a couple of comments just before we go on to our next topic. We've got Dave Howard. So good to catch this by accident. Oh, sorry, Dave. Notification bell, that'll get you next time. Catching this nerd out food. It's brilliant to hear Mitzi talk about non-tech and purpose parts driving it all. So thank you for that. And we've also got 4Cs, One Family, and he's come all the way watching us from Taiwan. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's all good stuff. Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely a good vehicle. I think it's important with any social platform to know where your audience is. And I think that's a difficult thing, depending on what niche you are. Here comes the rain, hitting the roof very hard, so apologies. But it's interesting to know that LinkedIn is working for many people. But I think there's, and we're going on to this now, there's an absence of video in LinkedIn. And I think there's some crazy statistics that of all the people that are on LinkedIn, only 4 or 5% actually post any video. Mainly it's text-based posts and things like that. And you definitely, Mitzi, over the last few months have been embracing video, both in widescreen and vertical format. So talk about the sort of the reasoning behind that. Do you think video is much more effective, much more engaging, especially on platforms like LinkedIn, more eye-catching, and gives people a quick summary and sees you as a personality as opposed to reading through maybe a longer, more refined post?
Well, I've got a number of views on this, because I would have said that. I think when I'm talking to people about using video, it's because I think you can make a personal connection. They can see you. I mean, I know we can clone ourselves on LinkedIn with AI and do all sorts of things, but for the most part, what I'm seeing in text-based postings is so much AI. I see all the tells that show me that this has just been, churned out by ChatGPT or whatever. Now, the person may be an authority in that, but they could be somebody who knows very little and they just said, create this for me, and they've posted it. And so, it's just seeing tons of long form stuff, which is, pretty meaningless as far as I'm concerned. And whereas if I'm doing a video, I can connect with people. They can see me, they can hear me. Okay, sometimes I might script something, but more often than not, it'll be me speaking just speaking to camera. Or it will have been scripted in such a way to reflect what I know. The script that I might have used ChatGPT to help me generate will have touched on particular things that only come from a depth of 20, 30 years worth of knowledge around leadership. It won't be because I said I'll just, pick a topic out of thin air. But it's certainly, I think that's something you're able to communicate more strongly using video. That said, occasionally I find just a quote can be incredibly powerful and get more reaction than anything. But it's, I think your point earlier about is creating value, and it's creating something that's meaningful to you. Because I see a lot of posts from people who are saying, I get hundreds of thousands of views and that. And I think, yeah, but all you're talking about is how to get more views. There's nothing more, and it's almost like a Ponzi scheme almost of, how many views can you get? People are promoting this stuff. Right. So I've stopped looking at those anymore. And I think it's how do you create value? What's important to you? Simon Sinek, the great leadership guy, would say, what is your why? Why are you even doing this? And if you can communicate that, whether it's video or text, but in a genuine way, I think that's what's important.
Yeah, definitely. I think the running joke is there are far too many 18-year-old life coaches on X and these other platforms, and they're all regurgitating stuff from ChatGPT. But let's not go down that route. Talking about AI. We've mentioned that, the tool you're using for scheduling isn't necessarily AI, but you've been using some AI tools recently to help you with your content. We're very interested to know what you've been using and how you've been using that. If you don't want to give your trade secrets away, of course.
No, it's okay. Just the really basic ones. ChatGPT is brilliant when you've trained it properly. I work with people and I show them how to use ChatGPT, but I don't give them a list of prompts, and I don't rarely use the same prompts. I almost get to have a conversation with it, and I brainstorm. So, for example, if I've had I typically record with permission, most of my calls with people. I then will use that to get a summary out of whatever tool I'm using, whether it's Loom or ChatGPT. But I won't just say summarize it. I will effectively interrogate it. I will ask questions about the content of the transcript. It will encourage me to go deeper and deeper and deeper into a topic. And so it's really having this amazing resource to hand. But from that, I might say, what do we think of because I feel like that I'm collaborating with someone almost. What are the 5 key things that I should focus on here? So I will have a view, but I might say, given what ChatGPT, what do you think are the most compelling elements here that I should focus on? And from that, I can start to write a script because I used to make a living out of writing scripts, but I can ask ChatGPT to create a script for me in a matter of seconds. Now, again, it's that thing about it can feel very generic AI type script. So typically I'll say, right, I want you to write it as though I was sitting down having a cup of coffee with a senior leader who's really challenged by whatever's going on in his particular division. And that's how I want it written, or bullet points to that effect. And then that's what I will use to create, whatever video I'm doing. I'd say 70% of the time I'm not using a script, but occasionally, particularly when I'm delving into really quite complex issues, I will do that. But the other thing I'd say is in 90 seconds in a video, I can cover some really complex material, which I think people find quite helpful. And so, there is so much that is available to us now to help us communicate more effectively.
There are so many AI tools out there. Go on, Martin, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, on that topic, I've sort of picked up on one that came out this week, and it's the Gamma tool. And I don't know if you've used Gamma before, but it produces some very nice PowerPoint documentation from prompts. But you can also dump in all of your own text as well. So you could have done all of that research within ChatGPT and then got it to a summary level and then put it into Gamma, and it will produce you nice looking decks with a whole bunch of associated photographs, if that's the modern clean style photos, if that's what you want, which in your environment you will. So you can specify those things and then change them all up, and it produces a lovely deck for you, and you can export that to various different formats. So this week they've also now introduced the ability to create social posts and put them straight out to LinkedIn. So you can effectively follow the same workflow, but what it will do then is produce either a single page or a multi-page document, because it does produce it as a document, and it's formatted very nicely, and you can literally press the button and put in a couple of lines of text if that's what you want to do, add in extra text above it, which normally you would, so the same as you would for a normal text, and you press the button and then it will post it straight out to LinkedIn as a multi-page or single page document. So it will appear in the feed and you can flick through it or keep it as it is. You can choose between landscape, square or portrait format. You can choose limited number of effectively bullet points through to detailed conversational elements as well. So it's small, medium, large, and of course you can go and play about with it all and change it before you actually put the post out. But it works very, very smoothly, and it does give you a very slick looking image. So I'm thinking as I'm doing that this week, I've only done a couple. Oh, this works really well. I like this. Then at the same time, I'm thinking, no, actually, video's way more effective than producing even the best looking PowerPoint-esque type post, which is what they are really. It's kind of a mini PowerPoint post, but it does summarize 5 top reasons why you might want to join this event, for instance. So I think there's a mixture of, at the moment, static posts and video posts, and whether you do them landscape, portrait or square, that's still all up for grabs really. We're not sure 100% on what the feedback is, because LinkedIn will tell us there's been a massive growth in video, which is true, but there's been a massive growth because there wasn't any there before. So you can have an 800, 1,000% growth in video in 12 months if there wasn't any there to start with. Percentage-wise, it doesn't make, lies, damn lies and statistics effectively. So you can make what you want out of that. But in terms of the engagement, they do definitely state that by far the most engagement now comes from video content as opposed to any other form of content. But if you look at some of the, as I would say in Scotland, high-hedians of LinkedIn, the people who've been there for a long, long time, these are people who spend their whole life reading books all day long and don't watch films or Netflix or these are no longer the demographic, but these are the people who are saying, oh, this thing's got no future on LinkedIn. Nobody will watch vertical video. Well, the demographic has moved from over 45s to 25 to 45, and all they do is sit and scroll on. They're going to see the video content. So for the people who think video content isn't for LinkedIn, they're just wrong. So there is also space for written content, but they genuinely think that bunch of people are heading towards retirement and not caring anymore, but they're still a vocal minority who are going to say, oh no, I want to read the written content. The reality is, if you're doing a video, they can tell, as you mentioned really, just by looking at you, they can know whether you're happy or annoyed or have got a point to make just by looking at you within 1 second, because that's your genuine self that they are looking at and connecting with on LinkedIn. And that's the purpose of video, to me anyway. And I think certainly for myself and Neil, when we're doing video, if you just go and meet us in real life, we're exactly the same as we are here. So it is like you're connecting with somebody. We're not giving you a sales pitch. We're just saying, this is the way we think. This is the way it is. So I think video can be incredibly powerful. Even before you've said anything, people will already know what you're about to launch into or otherwise, I think.
I think it does command Go ahead, Mitzi, sorry.
I was going to say, I did do a series of videos with a colleague of mine, Myron Rogers, who's very well known in the leadership world. And what we did was we just started having conversations, which would go on for an hour about everything, politics, the news. And what we wanted was something really spontaneous, where it wasn't a formal interview, it wasn't scripted. We didn't really know what the questions were going to be. We knew we were just going to be talking about something that usually it's to do with the election, actually, and in the States, because he's American. But then what I would do from that, and using tools like Descript and such like, which means editing is so simple. Or of course you can have editors that will now just give you clips. But I prefer to choose the clips that I use. I find that it's not quite nuanced enough, the ones that are automated. But using things like Descript, being able to pull out real nuggets, just short little things which are really pithy and make people sit up and take notice, and that I find really enjoyable. But and of course it ignites my thinking about an issue. But I found that's really helpful. So I just whenever I'm meeting Myron, I just hit the record button and say, by the way, Myron, I might well, he doesn't mind his language. We just try to keep it spontaneous and real. And so when I find that's great fun. I really enjoy doing it.
That's great. You mentioned Descript. Obviously, that's got an AI component in as well. Just before we go on to that, we have another comment come in. And my mouse has disappeared. Where is my mouse? Oh, here it is. It's coming from 4Cs, One Family. Please keep in mind AI tools like ChatGPT are mainly informational gatherers and not analyzers. Research by vetted human elements are of the most importance. And that's right to a degree. I mean, ChatGPT relies on all the data and books and information that's been written by people, but also ChatGPT has very good, just like many AI tools, analytic components which will help sort and sift through all kinds of data. I use it for Excel spreadsheets, writing code, analyzing code that I've written. Sometimes I tried to write a little Google script for somebody the other day. I got it wrong, and I just threw it into ChatGPT and said, "Oh, this is what you did wrong." I'm like, of course, and I'm not a coder, but now I am, because I can use ChatGPT to analyze the code and do things as well. You mentioned Descript, though, which is really a tool that I have a love-hate relationship. I've said many times on this channel, sometimes it works superbly well for me and I can get on with it, and other days it just does not do anything right at all. Is that one of the tools that you use primarily in your workflow? I know we've worked together on a Descript project before now that's caused a few issues. But in terms of other AI tools, other than Descript, is there anything else that you use in your sort of day-to-day workflow for creating content?
I use Perplexity occasionally for research, because it just goes that bit. Some of its citations and referencing is a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Google LLM, is it? I always forget the title of
Notebook
it.
LM,
the notes package. I find that really quite helpful as a repository for lots of information. Where I'm wanting to almost have a database of all my thoughts on something.
Right.
I can, that's great, because if I was, for example, creating a video-based course, could very quickly create polls, quizzes, all sorts of things. It will even create recordings. So I don't know whether you've tried this. Well, I've put in loads of information about a topic, and then I can't remember what well, anyway, within the app, it will create an audio file of two people discussing the topic
Notebook
in
LM,
depth,
yes.
as though it was a perfectly genuine, real live, podcast, which is phenomenal, which, for some things is really, really useful. Just ways of creating material. But I'd come back to the point that for me, it's usually my material. It's taken into account my thoughts, my ideas. We all have well, I like to think, unique way of pulling certain things together, which is reflected in the output. It's not just, I haven't just pressed a button and said, oh, can you create this? I know it could do something, but people will never come back to me if I just have something generic, I like to think people who work with me because of my particular style and way of seeing the world. And I use AI, to, I suppose, to enhance that in some ways, or to just make things easier and faster.
Yeah,
I spent half a day using Gamma today, by the way, Martin. I got a bit stuck on certain things. I might have to come back to you for some tips.
Yeah, you can come back to me or contact Brian Kosak. I think you know Brian. He's a Gamma ambassador now.
All right.
So,
okay. Thank you.
But yeah, we'll be talking about Gamma, I'm sure, in future episodes, because they just released a whole load of new stuff literally this week. So that's good. And I think my job here is to keep an eye on the clock as well. So believe it or not, we've already been on for an hour.
Really? Goodness. Oh yeah, look at that. 5:59. Goodness me.
So it's amazing how we get quite that far. But you have also given us an opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're about to release, which is our training course for going live on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Because we have done our market research using an AI tool called Eureka. And Eureka, what it does, it will go out and look at all the training courses available in the world on all of the major platforms, including LinkedIn Learning, and Udemy and all of the other platforms. And it comes back and it analyzes your set of proposed training details and then tells you how many other courses there are. There are 2 courses on LinkedIn Live. One is about 3 years old and looks quite good, and the second one isn't really on LinkedIn Live at all. It's about being confident on camera, and if you're not confident on camera, how to get confident on camera. It's nothing to do with the technical steps to going live on LinkedIn, which is what we're covering on our course, but we're also covering the equally important how to look good on camera and sound good on camera, because there's no point in having a vast quantity of substandard video on LinkedIn, so it's got to be decent quality. So we will cover all of those bases as well. And thirdly, because it ties in with what you're talking about here, we'll also look at some other AI type workflows as well, which help with getting content together and getting it up there. So there's sort of 3 different elements to it, plus looking at some additional plug-in tools like Ecamm itself and Camo and Streamer Live for audience engagement. So looking at some of the other tools as well, bring it all together in a course, and we've pretty much recorded it all. Neil's got to now mix it all, which is an equally as long job, and then we need to get it out to the platform and then start sort of advertising it all out. But to your point, really, it's not particularly obvious how you do connect everything up to go live on LinkedIn at all. And one of the main problems is if you Google it, you will get 5 years worth of how to do this, and most of it, 99% of it, is out of date. So it will tell you to go in all the wrong places. It will tell you need to fill in a form and send it in, and you will have to go through a vetting process, and you won't know how long you have to wait till you come. None of that's true. It's all wrong. So all of that content which is hanging out there, whether it's written content or video content, 99% of it is wrong, because LinkedIn have changed all of the parameters and the way it works. And so this is a course for as of April 2025. It may be changed by the time June comes around, but at the moment, we're hoping that that's going to work out for us.
Brilliant.
And when are you planning to go live on LinkedIn then, Mitzi? You mentioned that you have something coming up soon.
Yes, I've completely forgotten that I was going to go LinkedIn Live till I mentioned it till the day, so it's going to be the 15th of April.
Oh, wow. And is that on your website then? So if people go to mitziwyman.com, they can find it?
I only started promoting it this week, and as I say, I spent half a day this morning trying to do something on Gamma, which I thought would take minutes, and it seems to take hours. But maybe tomorrow or early next week. It's very late in the day, but because I know there are a certain group of people who will come to it anyway, I would hope. I'm not looking for huge numbers, and I'm really just practicing on this first one, and they know that. So.
Perfect. Well, let us know if you need any guidance in getting connected before that time. A couple of comments coming in as well from Valerie. So Valerie says, loving this conversation, and she's in agreement with all that you're saying, Mitzi, about AI. She feels the same way. And she also mentioned that people need to have more integrity when using these AI tools. Absolutely. I mean, I had a conversation the other day with people about plagiarism, writing books and things like that. And yes, use AI by all means as an editor, but you don't want to plagiarize people's material and then pass it off as your own. More comments coming in before
I've started attributing AI. I've started to say made with AI, because I think that's, there's being, it just feels more appropriate, really.
Exactly. And Valerie's kindly posted in the comments where they can, people can find you as well, Mitzi. But I think everything's on your website as well, mitziwyman.com, which is great. Thank you, Martin, again for keeping us honest on time. I think we should have another conversation, Mitzi, after you've done a couple of your LinkedIn Live shows. Let us know how it's gone, and we'd love to have you back on the show and to see what's going on. By all means, just stay in the Zoom room for a second while we just sign off today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and we've really enjoyed the conversations, and I will do my best not interrupt Martin anymore. All right.
See you in a minute.
See you in a minute. All right. So we have, as Martin kindly mentioned, our course is coming very soon. I've got to do a bit of editing. I was recording about 5 other modules today just because I made a mess of the others and deleted one, as I mentioned, Martin. So we can get people to sign up already and register your interest here at streamprofiles.sellfy.store. You can put your email address in to this to register your interest for the course, and you'll be notified when it comes out. But I think anybody who wants to go live on LinkedIn and making it as simple as possible, we've even got ideas and gear suggestions for you to just level up your LinkedIn Live presentations and so on. And be there first, because at the end of the day, you need to be on video now. LinkedIn Live is really pushing it, both vertical and widescreen format. So why not get on board and start joining the fun here on LinkedIn Live? And thank you, Valerie, again for pushing out those comments. So, Martin, what are we doing in the next couple of weeks? Well, what are we doing next week anyway? Do we have any plans for what we're doing next week?
I think we're planning for the week after.
Okay.
We've got a big gig we're doing with Streamer Live on the 16th of April. And we're going to be joined by Lux from Streamer Live, who is the CEO and co-founder. And we're going to do a little bit of a live makeover for Lux. He's not really going to know what's coming.
Exactly. Oh dear. Watch this space. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we got that coming up, and we will be doing some sort of pre-recordings and little tasters of the video training course, which is about to come up. But it's a whole learning experience for us as well. Actually, we've done loads of training type materials, but they tend to be on the Ecamm channel or on our own YouTube channels and places like that. So this will be the first time we put together a paid for content course creation, and it'll be interesting to see just how that goes. A learning process to share with everybody as well.
Exactly. So next week we may have a guest, we may not. We may do a show, we may not. We have my other esteemed co-host from Creative Amplifiers, the other show that I'm on from time to time, Mark Taylor, will be over. And I just wanted to give Mark a shout out. Today is his 50th birthday. He won't be watching the show. He'll be celebrating somewhere with his family. But I wanted to wish you a very happy birthday, Mark, and have a wonderful time. And
happy birthday, Mark.
Mark is coming over to Portugal next week, so we may see him in this studio. We're not going to do green screen, or we might try and fool people. Is it green screen? Is it real? Who knows? So we may have a show coming up next week. We will advertise it on LinkedIn and all the other socials. But for now, we will definitely be back in a couple of weeks with some stuff. I don't know where my buttons are. I've moved my Stream Decks around. Here's the end button. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks, Mitzi, and for all the wonderful comments. Goodbye from Portugal.
Cheerio.